I'm Mihai Lukaci. I am a theater director, and I'm doing a theater show about the refugees from Timișoara. And part of this artistic project is also this research session where I have discussions with people about refugees in Romania, refugees in Timișoara, and I am very much interested in the context of these new waves of refugees that are arriving now in Romania, and especially in Timișoara as a border city or close to the border, where lately there are a lot of Afghan refugees arriving, especially after the Taliban took over Afghanistan this summer. And for this evening, I invited Professor Ershad from Avicenna University. He arrived maybe at the end of August.
Yeah.
In
2 months ago.
2 months ago. He arrived in Romania, evacuated by the Romanian state, thanks to the academics from Bucharest University. They knew each other before, and they intervened, and they helped this complicated process of evacuation. Like Professor Ershad, there are other people in Romania that were held by the Romanian state, and I think Andreea Ghimpu-Lupașcu will talk more about them, because we talked before, and she just told me that she was in Galați, the refugee center there, and she talked to these people that were evacuated by the Romanian state. And we also have Bogdan Popa. He is a researcher at Transylvania University from Brașov, and he works on political theory, and we will try to have also a discussion about the context. As I mentioned before, I will not talk too much. I already did, and I will let them make us understand what is going on actually nowadays with the refugees, with the situation in Afghanistan, and also maybe look a bit at the recent history of the region. So maybe Zaker, if you want to start, how do you find the situation in Romania, let's say, since you arrived?
Good evening, everyone. To be honest, is a gold opportunity for me to participate in this session, to know you, and we can find some chance for discussion and for talking to each other in terms of several things and many questions regarding to the Afghanistan crisis, and maybe in terms of refugees situation and status, and so. And thank you for your invitation, and first and foremost, let me to deliver my thanks and appreciate to all Romanian authorities who help my family and my children in last crisis which happened in Afghanistan, because otherwise, to be honest, it's not clear what happened, because the present situation of Afghanistan, it seems to like a tragedy and something like this. Anyway, as I told you before, we can ponder our situation in terms of many factors. In terms of security, I think it's a good, and it's not comparable with Afghanistan and some countries which located in neighborhood of Afghanistan, like Pakistan, Iran, and Central Asia, and so. But in terms of another things, maybe it's so difficult for us and for my family, because maybe you know that more than 10 years I have been teaching in different universities in 2 levels, bachelor and master degrees. I graduated from political science, as well the Islamic studies. So when I thinking about my background, when I'm thinking about my students who were eager to participate in my class, they are raised some question in terms of human rights, women rights, and some civil policies and civil activities. So now I don't have such an opportunity. Sometimes they contact and they call me and ask me about different things, but to be honest, I'm not able to answer. And it's not suitable for me to answer to those questions, because I'm now in here, I'm as a refugee, I don't have any specific network, and as you know, just you can consider and imagine all things. As well in terms of some social network. In here up to now, I don't have any social network. I don't know anyone, just even including Afghan refugees, just among all Afghan refugees who are living in Bucharest, just I know one family, because he is my student, Mustafa Sarwari. Maybe he's an educated family among the Afghan refugees in Bucharest. But other, I don't know. My youngest children, sometimes he's thinking and focused on some things. I ask him, what are you doing and what are you thinking? He just said, I'm thinking about my classmate, about my friends, about those children who are as my friend, and we were playing football and walking and so. But now he's alone. Just for all day and night they are stay at home. So because of this situation and condition, of course, we face big challenges and difficulties. And as you know that all refugees, because they are new and they are not familiar with cultural things and maybe the food and clothes and all things are new for us. We should do our best to adjust with the new situation. As you know that it's maybe takes a long time. Of course, we just practice now Romanian language in my home with my children. Just I learned 2 or 3 concept of Romanian, salut and ce faci, ci mai salut and the dumana bună. I don't know exactly some concept like this. But my youngest children is very clear and he's better than us. Yeah, when I go to him, I ask him, you should practice and you should say it for me and help me, because otherwise maybe I know and I learn, but suddenly I forget all things. So anyway, but when I sum up my talking and my idea, in terms of security, in terms of some political issue, yeah, of course, it's very safe. We are safe, and as you know that it's not comparable with those countries. But in terms of social network, social affairs, and cultural affairs, we face some challenges because we are new in this country, in Bucharest. Although I have been in another European countries like Germany, France, Switzerland, and Sweden, but in Romania is the first time I came here. So we need some times to be able to adjust our family regarding to the cultural affairs, to social affairs, and something like this. But generally, I'm very glad to be here and to find some opportunity to find some educational opportunity. It's supposed to cooperate with some professor in Bucharest University for next semester in terms of fundamentalism, in terms of politics in Afghanistan and Central Asia, and so. And it's, I think it's enough for now, but if you have some question, I'm ready to directly answer your question. Thank you so much.
Thanks. So, Andreea, what is the situation with the Afghan refugees now in arriving in Romania? Because from what I understood, from what I talked to people that know more about the refugees, it's still very confusing. We don't know exactly what is going on with this, especially with these young people that are arriving, and you mentioned that we were discussing before that you work with the people that were evacuated by the Romanian state, which have a different status, let's say. So maybe we can discuss more about.
I could start by giving a little bit of an overview. So in Romania, in total, there are around 4,000 holders of international protection. That means people who have refugee status. Leaving that aside, in terms of asylum seekers, so those people who are requesting a form of protection, they claim that they are persecuted in their country of origin and that they need urgent help. It's been a recent increase, a sharp increase in the number of asylum applications. So this year, so far, we have recorded 7,500 approximately asylum applications. I know that doesn't sound like a big number, and it's not when you think of the number of asylum applications Germany, Sweden, and other Western countries register, right? They're talking about 1 million asylum applications. They've been talking before in the past 2015. So 7,000 should be absolutely nothing for a country like Romania, which has a population of, 18 million people, right? It should be easy to absorb. But in practice, this has put a little bit of a challenge on authorities. And why do I say that? Because the country hosts 6 reception centers. The reception centers are the places where they go to accommodate, right, and to have their start in Romania, and where they are provided with immediate support until they receive a response to their asylum application. But the total capacity of hosting asylum seekers is of around 900 places, right? You have the capacity to host 900 persons. So when you confront with a number of 7,000, that can translate into a little bit of a pressure on the system. And leaving that aside, it's not, when you talk about asylum seekers, you don't talk only about a bed for them to sleep. You also talk about helping them integrate, and that is such a complex concept. I mean, it's hard to define what you do. That means that all authorities should be involved in order to help them, and we're not talking only about the General Inspectorate for Immigration, which is the authority who deals with this procedure. When it comes to other authorities, there can be issues related to them acknowledging the fact that they have attributions in this sense. Romania is a transit country, actually. We do not like to accept that and to promote this rhetoric, because by saying that we are a transit country, it's like it can lead to, authorities, stakeholders in this process to say, hey, it doesn't matter that they're coming, because either way they're going to try to flee the country and end up in Western Europe, right? One of the reasons people choose to leave the country, although they apply here for asylum, is the fact that we do not have such a good reputation, right? That doesn't surprise anybody. It doesn't surprise us, right? But it's something we try to work with. The organization I am working for, the Romanian National Council for Refugees, and my particular role is to support those who get recognized as refugees to stay here, to find a job, to equate their diplomas, and everything they've built so far in their country of origin, and try to find an equivalent here in Romania, and find a path. It's a challenging thing, but I don't want to avoid your question. So what's been happening recently is that we have a sharp increase in the number of asylum applications. The risk assessment, how the border police calls it, indicate that this is going to continue. So we are not going to go back to the traditional number of asylum applications, which used to be of around 2,000 per year. So that was what the state was used to and what it could manage. So the country will have to adapt. So amongst these 7,000 applications, at least half of them come from Afghan refugees, Afghan citizens. So this is in accordance to, this of course reflects the situation in Afghanistan and the crisis they've been through. It actually it's been it's been indicating that the crisis will happen in August this year, right? We have observed that. But it is also interesting to see how many of those who applied for asylum actually choose to remain here. And when I was talking about the transit country rhetoric, I wanted to point out that out of the total of number of asylum applications registered in 2020, approximately half of the people left the country. So they did not finish the asylum procedure because of the image Romania has as a country which is not, doesn't offer as many opportunities for them to integrate here. I would add one more thing related to my visit in Galați. I was there for 2 days, and we did a little bit of surveys and discussions with the Afghan refugees who were relocated. There were approximately 140 people who came, and all of them have graduated a form of higher education. They used to work for the public administration. Part of them used to collaborate with the Romanian army, and they have ambitions, actually, and they have the ambition of actually staying here, and that was delightful for me to hear, and to find their way here. But it's going to be challenging. I will tell you that.
And I wanted to ask you also about this situation in Timișoara, if you can tell us more about it. How do you explain? Of course, there are many explanations related to the location and so on. But maybe you can develop more on this situation at the border, let's say.
Yes. So Timișoara is, of course, it's the western border. It's on the western border. It has a joint border with Serbia and with Hungary. Serbia is a country of entrance for the migrants who are entering Romania, and Hungary is the border of exit. Reason why there is lots of transit in the area. Timișoara as well hosts a reception center for asylum seekers there, and as well an emergency transit center, which is managed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, through which they evacuate people through different procedures, so it's a different center. Recently, it's been through a little bit of challenges in the past years because of this increase in the number of asylum applications. And because it was confronted with the fact that there were many migrants who chose not to apply for asylum, right? If you choose not to apply for asylum, and I'm talking from my perspective and the perspective of our organization. So if you choose not to apply for asylm, you will not be able to be hosted and accommodated and provided with support from the state. In order to, have a decent conditions, right, support for your livelihood and so on. And those people do not live in the reception center; they live outside of the reception center. For CNRR, the organization I work for, they are out of reach. They are out of reach. I mean, we work with those who are in the reception center. We provide them with legal counseling and support in this procedure, but we cannot go on the field in order to help the migrants who did not apply for asylum. I would add a little bit of clarification. So there is a legal framework, right? Romania has, it's seen as a country which respects the rule of law. We like to see ourselves as such, at least, right? So if you apply for asylum and you get rejected, you can access legal remedies. You can go to court in front of a judge, in front of a judecătorie, and then in front of a tribunal. So in the asylum procedure, it's the tribunal, which is competent. So there is a possibility for you to challenge a decision which may not be favorable for you, in case you consider that you are not treated with justice and equity and so on and so forth. We are doing this for them. We are helping them by through counseling and providing them with lawyers. But if you're not confident in this process, and some of the migrants actually claim that they do not confined in this process, in this procedure, reason why they choose to go further in Germany or in Sweden, countries which have a reputation that they are open to migration, they are open to allow refugees to come in and to help them integrate. This is a perception. And perceptions are very important in these discussions. Perceptions are absolutely essential, and particularly when it comes to them, because it may impact actually their future, their life, and their opportunities to stay in a safe country. That's essential.
Bogdan, what do you, what can you comment on this idea of a refugee in Romania? I mean, historically, or in terms of a political science perspective, because as I see it, is not such a new phenomena. First of all, if you look at the recent history, let's say if we look at the 20th century, we had a lot of refugees, mainly because there were wars in Europe, and we had European refugees and so on. Then we had in the 90s refugees coming from former Yugoslavia. But now we can see that there is a change of perspective, maybe because there were not so many conflicts around, or people that were in conflicts didn't arrive with these roots to Romania. So how do you see this?
Well, what comes to mind is that we're living in a world that where people generally use human rights to make sense of refugees, and there's a new language. There's this new language of migrants that gets attached, from a legal standpoint, to people like Professor Ershad. But historically, he is a war refugee. A war refugee is a sort of a particular kind of a case where you have someone fleeing from one's country because of the war, right? So here we can think a little about our position as a country, Romania, in connection to Afghanistan. In a lot of accounts about what's happening in Afghanistan, there is this sort of a move to exoticize, to look at that place as being completely different from, let's say, from Eastern Europe. And in many cases, it's not. To just add a little bit of history here, because that's what I do. You can think about, Professor Ershad and I come from a sort of a similar kind of a generation, the end of the 70s. And at the end of the 70s, what you have, it's the beginning of a fall of socialism. And in two countries that are closer to Afghanistan, in Iran, you have a revolution, a nationalist right-wing Islamic revolution, right? And then in Pakistan, with General Zia, you have sort of a power grabbing from a couple of generals who actually killed the socialist leader of the country. So all of a sudden, the entire front in that area changes, right? Socialism starts to lose its power. The U.S. is using Afghanistan as a way to control and restrain Soviet Union. And Soviet Union actually intervenes in Afghanistan at the end of the 70s. There is a communist takeover of power. But in my history, the Soviets were not happy with the leader, so actually they intervened, and that country became a sort of a front. There is this expression, ghost war, right? So, during the Cold War, countries, the U.S. and the Soviet Union actually are fighting in countries that are proxies, and Afghanistan was one of those countries, right? So they were fighting this, this ideological war in a different country, and what you have after the 1990s is a change of situation with the fall of the Soviet Union and the rise of the Taliban as a power, and with 2001 and what the U.S. calls the war on terror, that whole the global situation changes because of Afghanistan. Now to come back a little bit to Romania, so in some sense we were, being a socialist country, we were part of that war. We were not a neutral bystander to what was happening globally. So we were on the side of Soviet Union. So we were part of what was happening in Afghanistan. After 2001 and with the NATO alliance, things also have changed, right? We've changed. After 1989, we've changed sides. So we become part of a war on a different side. So we've been involved in this war as a country for a long time, but people don't want to talk about it because it brings up the question of responsibility, of what you can do. And here we have a case, a sort of a practical case where you're thinking about what can you do about the war refugees that are coming. So we can talk a little bit more about history, but that's a sort of a sense of of the history. And another thing that I want to add is, like, people, when people think about Afghanistan, it's sort of again, there are a lot of orientalizing fantasies about, like, what's happening in Afghanistan, right? So Afghanistan, to my mind, for 8 or 9 years, was basically a country that was made socialist by the Soviets, the way Romania was made socialist after 1948. So you have a situation where people from Afghanistan were not that different from us. If you look at, reconstruct, there's this movie made by an Afghani director after the memoirs of an Afghani writer who lived as an orphan in an orphanage in the 80s in Afghanistan. And when you look at these, at the memoirs with the, like, how the Soviets were treating the orphans and what kind of possibilities were giving to them, in terms of traveling to Moscow, in terms of actually being taken care of, you look at what's happening in Afghanistan not as a, as a sort of a country that is completely different from us, right? And another film that comes to mind that might help us with this is, I don't know if you've seen this film. It's called Charlie Wilson's War. Maybe you've seen it. It's a Hollywood production with Julia Roberts and Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks plays this. He's a very historical character. He's a very important historical character. He is a Republican from Texas who actually helps the Mujahideens, or what I call this right-wing nationalists that are using Islam to support their ideas. And Charlie Wilson basically, like, funded with a lot of money, and he was very instrumental in actually helping the CIA, funding through Pakistan, the fighters, the Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. So if you look at that film, you can see the level of involvement, not of the US, because here's not about the US, here's about a particular kind of ideology in the US, which, if you look at Texas right now, like, they want to ban abortions. That kind of a right-wing nationalism is so prevalent in the US, but it's globally spreading across the globe because of what was happening in Afghanistan. So to just end here, you can think about Afghanistan as a country that has the dimensions of Texas. It's basically, it has the same kind of surface. Afghanistan has 40 million people. But Afghanistan, and to some extent, the sort of a right-wing ideology that is so prevalent, not just in the US, these are stories that need to be connected.
Yeah, to be honest, political issue in Afghanistan is so complicated. There are several factors which impact directly on political issue. Geographical factors, religions, idea and belief, and maybe some identical factors, because as you know that Afghanistan is a minority group, minority countries. There are at least 4 famous ethnicity and ethnic in Afghanistan: Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, and Uzbek. And there are a lot of minorities too. But unfortunately, based on the background of Afghanistan, all those factors produce some challenges. And up to now, we are not able to manage to arrange political policy, cultural policy, and so. But we hope that because all European countries, maybe, or most European countries, US, and some of my neighbors came to Afghanistan and helped us, and we are decisive to go forward, and we developed and promote different aspects of Afghanistan, but unfortunately, at the end, I don't know, it's a kind of weird happening in Afghanistan. Why European countries, US, and some other countries who has spent a lot of money and time and energy and something like this, why at the end they leave Afghanistan like this? Why? I don't know. As I told you, the present circumstances of Afghanistan is a reflection of NATO's decision, US decision, Romania's authority decision. Why? Because they, in 2001, all countries, famous countries, European countries, US, Russia, and Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and so, all of them claim that Taliban as a extremist group, not only for Afghan people, but also for all countries around the world, they are a danger. Yeah? It is as a phobia and fear for all human beings. Why? Because they are ideologists, they are extremist group. And they never recognize for human beings any right, for women and girls and ethnicity and minorities and for any social groups. They don't recognize any right. But after 2 decades, why US and European countries recognize Taliban as a political group, not as a fear, not as a phobia? Why? I don't know. Although now, not theoretically, but regarding to the fact, political fact and social, just the day before yesterday, Taliban killed 4 women in Mazar Sharif because they are activists, like you. 4 girls. Why? Because they are social activists. They are journalists. And based on the perspective of Talibans, all girls and women, they don't have any right for life. They are not allowed to go to the university. They just stay at home. And how shall I put it? How can consider these circumstances? I don't know. From another side, when Taliban took over and occupied Afghanistan, all things, including system, political system, social system, educational system, collapsed and come down. Recently, the one news agency published and broadcast one news. More than 400 soldiers were killed by Taliban, and they gathered together in the hospital in Kabul. But although, in spite of these facts, why European countries, why Romanian authorities as a member of NATO recognize Taliban as a political group? They never accept negotiation. They don't believe in the dialogue. And just they focus on ideological behavior and policy. Based on this spectrum, based on this idea, I don't know. But now, this morning, I called with one of my colleagues. I said that, what's up, what's going on? Do you have any new news regarding to the Taliban policy? He said that every day, because Talibs maybe generally they have one address. Official address is a Taliban, Imarat Islami. But because they have different foreign supporter, they categorize and distinguish and distribute it in different groups, which they have challenges to each other too. They are struggling to each other too. For example, even in UNIMA, as a international organization, different people go there as a representative of Talib. They bitterly rejected their idea in one session, in one meeting. So, because of that, and generally in the final, the representative of Taliban claim like this: if the world and big or European countries and so, they never recognized us as a political regime and system, we never recognize those countries as a country. That's it. It's a kind of concept of Talibs. So in spite of this fact, why? As I told you, our situation and status now, I'm as a refugee here, because as I told you, I'm new in here, and I have lost all things. Why? I'm sure that it's a directly reflection of the Romanian authorities' decision and US and European countries and so. If they didn't recognize Talib as an extremist group, as a phobia, maybe we adjust with that situation. Maybe we adapt with that situation. Because European countries claim that is a phobia. Why? Because they are ideologists, they are extremist groups, they never recognize human rights and women rights and so. Because of that, I have been teaching political science based on modern value, based on liberalism and socialism and Marxism and so. But finally, all things disappeared. But now, Talib recognized me as a secular. And all secular doesn't have any right. They should be killed. And all girls who are studying in universities, they don't have any right for life. Why? Because they are infected by the European countries as a kufr. They categorize all countries in two categories: Darul Islam and Darul Harb, Darul Kufr, in the language Arabic. Darul Islam is as a home or as a town which belong to the Islam, and the enemy of this home is belong to the non-Muslim. All human beings who are not Muslim, they are recognized as a enemy of Muslim. They have such idea. Because I'm as a secular, we categorize and classify in the next category. Because of that, I should be killed. Because we are, and so. But because of that, unfortunately, our neighbor like Pakistan, Iran, Central Asia countries, Saudi Arabia, they are thinking and they are concentrate on their national interest. It's usual. It's not bad. It's usual. But I don't know. But they're struggling between China and Russia, is US and Russia and so directly impact on our life. Now in Kabul, even in Kabul as a capital city, unfortunately there is no any chance for life. When you just are walking, suddenly the soldier of Talib stop. Why are you going? Why? Just yesterday I published a text in my Facebook, but 2 of my students called me from Kabul, please delete this picture because otherwise we are in danger and Taliban follow us. because 2 days ago, one of my colleagues was injured by shooting of Taliban. Why? Because Talib said that why you are wearing suit, why you are wearing tie. That's it. They're shooting 3. One of them is directly, and he is injured. It's my story. Talib should pass different step. The first step began by Zolmay Khalilzad as an envoy of US. The process of Doha, in Qatar, it took a long time, about 1 or 1.5 year. The peace negotiation, all official representative of Afghanistan and European countries and US got together, and they had some negotiation. The assumption of negotiation is that you accept the dialogues as a way and as a method to find a solution, yeah? Because otherwise Talib just thinking about shooting and killing and explosion and something and suicide attack. This is the instrument and is the policy of Talib. But after that, because of the policy of US and some policy which applied in the Doha, Qatar, Talib in power. And as well propaganda expand across the different different provinces of Afghanistan. Because of that, all soldier and national forces and Afghan groups, they were thinking European country and US decided like this to Taliban, yes, take a political power. Because the will of European country and US is a hegemon. Now, as well, as you nicely mentioned, it's a process for legitimization of Taliban. But, of course, in spite of this process, there are many factors, regional factors, which impact on political situation too in Afghanistan. For example, the challenges between Iran and maybe Pakistan, India and Pakistan, and Russia and China, and some factors which originated from this route, maybe they impact on Taliban. As you know that now, Taliban is not able to pay the salary of all staff. But I don't know, they are able to continue such a situation or not. So generally, yeah, of course, you are right. This is the facilitation of the legitimation process.
So if we can go back to this this process of abandoning Afghanistan, I mean, what would be your explanation? Because somehow it sounds without an explanation, but I'm sure you have some ideas.
Let me put our discussion to another side, which related to your situation in Bucharest too, because otherwise maybe just we are talking about one subject theoretically is not touched in your interest and your condition and so. Because all Afghan people who are now in Kabul or another provinces of Afghanistan are eager to flee from Afghanistan, to fugitive from Afghanistan, because they are thinking it's unendurable to be in Afghanistan, to remain in Afghanistan. they should leave Afghanistan. So, maybe it takes a long time, 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 decade, and so. They flee from Afghanistan. But when they come to Romania, I believe that maybe it's your field because it's your business. It's directly related to the security of Romania. It's related to some cultural challenges, environmental challenges, and so. But just maybe I make a mistake, but just I guess, up to now, the Romanian organization didn't devise a specific and particular program and agenda for integration of refugees. Just maybe sometimes they go in a specific trip and so. But you should select some factors, I mean national factors or some cultural factors and something which is impact directly in the psychology of Afghan and another thing like this, and you mixed with the present situation of Romania, and you should devise a plan and a process after to pass some times. At the end you can integrate it, the people, and I'm sure that they have, some of them they are skillful, some of them they have some capacity to be useful for themselves and as well for Romania. Because of that, because you are journalists and you are educational people, that's why you can help some Romanian authorities and organization to advise, to have some suggestion for those organizations. This is a kind of tragedy for us because we did our best for 2 decades. It's a long time. 2 decades, we practice the modern value, modern style, modern method, and lifestyle of Afghan people was changed.
So it was changed.
Yeah, for example, the girls in Kabul who were living in Kabul seems to be is a modern girl. You're thinking is in Bucharest or in France, in Germany. And it's not Afghanistan. And they had a good liberty and freedom. And especially regarding to the media. Because of that, because I was free, I could bitterly criticize the Taliban's idea on policy. And based the policy of government, I mean Ashraf Ghani's government, we are free and we didn't have any restriction. But now, no. As I told you, a man is a teacher because wear a suit and a tie, they should be killed. Hegemon wave, as I told you, is the Taliban's idea. They say that Taliban, because Taliban is a phobia. Believe me, Taliban is a phobia, is a fear. For example, I never forgot and never forget the last day I was in my office in Presidential Palace. My driver put me in picture, say that Dr. Ershad, go away. Because someone said that Taliban occupied the corner of Kabul. Go away. All bodies, just because they hearing such a news without any thinking,
so when you see that
went away.
That they are coming, you just think about
Why? Because they were thinking the supporter of this way is US. In fact, Afghan people and even special force were thinking like this. Maybe it's not true, in fact, but Afghan people and Afghan or national forces in Afghanistan on that time, they were thinking like this, because it's a will of US. Otherwise, Taliban is not able to occupy different provinces of Afghanistan.
I just want to add something. Sorry, we'll hear what you have to say. So, the narrative about what was happening in Afghanistan is that it was a sudden collapse of the state, right? So, to some extent, that is true. But at the same time, if you look at what was happening in Afghanistan, for a longer time, you could see that the U.S. was able to control Kabul and some big cities, while, as far as I know, a lot of the areas in the country were controlled by these right-wing nationalists, right? So, again, if we could go back to, I like the 80s, so I'm a sort of 80s person. So if we go back to the 80s, we could see that the U.S. funded the Mujahideens,
But
right?
you mean not necessarily Taliban?
No,
Yeah.
not the Taliban. The Taliban is a different story. Is a different story that comes particularly, like if you think about Osama bin Laden, and having a group of radical Islamists who are very well funded, and who were basically anti-Americans. Those people actually were able to shift, from what I know, the dynamic of power within Afghanistan, because what was happening was that the U.S. was helping the Mujahideens through Pakistan, right? So basically, all the money, right, all the money and the weapons were going through Pakistan, and Pakistan was funding particular kind of groups that they were interested in. But then once the Soviet Union left, you had this, in the 90s, you had the situation where basically various factions were fighting for power in Afghanistan. And the Taliban actually got into Kabul in 1995. So Kabul is a city, the biggest city, the gorgeous city, but was practically invaded a couple of times. So the sort of a dynamic of power among these groups, right, made that possible, made this sort of a fall of the state possible.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if US and European country claim that and announce we are as a strong supporter for Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, it's enough. The fighting and struggling and all things is the business and job of Afghan soldier. Yeah, we can do it. For example, if the European countries emphasize and focus on the democratic value and principle, it's a strategic for Afghan people too. The thing is, when the top official of US, including Zolmay Khalilzad, the envoy of US, announced and had an interview in Doha, Qatar, he said that, emphasizing this point, the kind of regime in Afghanistan is not my business. Is not related to us. It's directly related to the Afghan people. It means the democracy is not important for European countries and for US. Democratic regime is not important. Just maybe the Afghan group like Taliban, because Taliban said that and believe, as I told you, Afghanistan categorized in different ethnics: Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, Uzbek. Taliban completely belong to the Pashtun. regarding to this idea, Taliban's claim that although Ghani is a Pashtun too, Dr. Najib is Pashtun, all kings and president and prime minister and all top officials belong to the Pashtun in the history of Afghanistan. But Taliban, based on the ethnic factors, claim that and believe that in the period of the Ashraf Ghani divide the political power among different ethnics because they thinking they are a democrat. Yeah? They recognize other ethnic too. But we should focus on this point. The politics it has a owner. The owner of politics just Pashtun. Politics in Afghanistan belong to the Pashtun ethnic. That's it. Because of that, when the Zulmay Khalilzad announced officially the kind of regime is belong to the Afghan people, it means all things the representative of Taliban want, it's true. It's true. Because the Taliban is clear as crystal. It goes without saying. Taliban claim that we are Muslim, we are fundamentalist, and we are Pashtun. That's why we devise our strategy based in these factors. Women, based on the order of Islam, they should stay at home. You are because belong to the minority groups, you don't have any political rights. And you never go to the university because university is a modern's experience, which impact on the especially westernization culture. Yeah? Because just you go to the madrasa. Recently, the educational minister of Aftab claimed that all specialists and all educational elites, it's not useful for our country. Just we have one mullah, one maulwi is enough for me. Why? Because the traditional custom in Afghanistan emphasize on this point. Because of that, when the envoy of US in Qatar during the peace negotiation of Afghanistan announced like this, all Afghan were thinking like this. The will of European countries, including US, is that they should support Talib and they should take the political powers, and we are weak. We have a famous theory in political science which emphasizes on power. He said that, Michel Foucault, he's come from France. Yeah? He said that all things related directly to the political power. And political power, maybe they accept system, maybe they reject the system, maybe legitimize the system, maybe unlegitimize the system. But this theory, at least in Afghanistan, applied totally, completely. Unfortunately, it's bad, but it's true in Afghanistan.
Yes,
Yeah, it's the story of developed country. But our situation is fragile.
Again, when we're thinking about Afghanistan, it's about Europe, which has a different sort of a belief system as opposed to Afghanistan. I would give you a sort of a counter scenario, sort of an alternative scenario. Let's say, at the end of the 40s, there were a lot of fascists in Romania, right? And these fascists, people that were associated with Corneliu Zăla-Codranu. Some of these people were actually funded by the U.S. to fight against the socialists at the time in Romania. Let's imagine that these people were funded for like 20 or 30 years, right? And they were funded with heavy weaponry, and they were able to locate themselves in the mountains and to actually build an organization around different villages and cities. In this scenario, you can see maybe that at the end of the 90s, these people could have been able to take over the power in Romania. So this is not about West versus, let's say, a sort of a traditional country. This is about how actually how geopolitics functions here and who funds who, right? When we're talking about the sort of a failure of the state, this is a sort of a this is a failure of funding. So the U.S. realized that it cost them so much to have all this administration, if you in Kabul and in Afghanistan. So one of the reasons was basically to cut the sort of expensive administration that they had on their hands for like 10 or 15 years, right? So thinking about maybe power and money would help us figure out a little bit more what's happening rather than traditional values, because that would not help us, I think.
I can remember exactly the last day which Taliban occupied Kabul. As usual, I went to my office because I am as an advisor of presidential office. When my driver and my guards, I have some guards and driver and some facilities like this, because otherwise we were in danger. When I arrived at the office, I saw new things. My colleagues, some of them weren't there, and it's unusual, look like unusual. I asked one of my staff, where is Dr. Fazli? Fazli is a chief, main chief. Now he's in Sweden. Where is Dr. Fazli? Where is Dr. X or Y? So. He said that just top official last night when they went, and he just said that. I guess they never come back to office. Yeah. Just you, I don't know why you come here. I say that, why? He just was thinking and talking about different things, including, maybe they decided to go out. Maybe I took a picture from that moment too. As a joke, I told him, you just bring some tea and you take a picture, the last picture in this office. We are joking. After that, suddenly my driver called me. He said that, the special group we can call as a special force. Special force has a duty and responsibility to protect the president and all the staff of the presidential office. The special force took our car. So the situation is unusual. You hurry up, please. You have to go away. I said that, I don't know. What happened? But I called some another guys. They never answer me. And I called to my university, what happened? My colleagues in the university say that it's a rumor, some guys say that Taliban arrived on the corner of Kabul. You please hurry up and you come to the university, and we should decide about the situation, about all things which related to the university. Yeah, just I went out and took a taxi from the road, the street, took a taxi and went to the university directly. When I arrived in the university, but a little, maybe 20 minutes, after 20 minutes and something like this, one of my students and as a guard of my university came to my office and said that, yeah, please, you should decide it about the class, because on that day, all our students came to university and participate in class. You should say that because most of our students belong to the area and location which claim that the Taliban occupied that places. Yeah, we decided the university is off, you have to go. But after that, one of my colleagues came and picked me up, and we flee from university too. But when I went out, all population of Kabul were confused and never are able to find their way. It's unimaginable condition and situation. All one, they just go and come. It's a rush traffic and so. And all one flee from their location to another places. Yeah, that's it. Just one of my friends, because he's working in the national security office, he called me, yeah, you never be concerned, because it's supposed Taliban just arrive in the border of the Kabul, but it's supposed they never interfere to the Kabul. Because United, as I told you, because US and the ambassador of US in Kabul decide like this and said that for Taliban you should stop in the corner of Kabul after we decided we should come and enter in the Kabul. It's a common idea. Maybe it's not true, but it's a common idea. Yeah. But I called my families and we should move from home to another places, because my home and my address is clear for all Talibs. That's why we go and we went away to another places in the corner of another location and clear and known for my colleagues even. That's why after 2 or 3 hours, because some rebellion and some gangsters and those guys like this and thief and so, they are occupied in some center, and it's like anarchy, because all soldier national forces went away because of that rumor. So 2 or 3 or maybe 1 weeks, we hiding our family to the another corner. But suddenly fortunately on that day, I received a call from one of my friends. He's a professor, George Anacha. He's teaching in the Galat University, because he's my classmate in the United States. He said that, are you safe? What's going on? Yeah, I told him, yeah, I'm safe, but all things is okay. Just Kabul, calm down, and so. But after 1 week, I think, one Romanian staff from Embassy of Romania in Kabul called me. You have to be, because all people who are living in Kabul, even in provinces of Afghanistan, came to Kabul and directly went to the airport. It was a rush, a traffic, and so. It's impossible to went to the airport, because I received some recommendation letter from US too. But it's impossible to go to the airport.
But because of the traffic jam.
Yeah, traffic jam and rush and population and so. When Cosmin, I can remember his name, his name. Cosmin called me, you have to be in this address, I will pick you up and go to the airport from another door, another gate of airport. Yeah. Based on the schedule and our appointment, my family and I go there, and the Romanian guys pick me up, and we went to the airport. But it takes a long time. About maybe the way or the direction, usually it takes maybe 15 a quarter. But we stay about 7 to 8 hours to arrive the main gate of airport of Kabul. When we are about to enter to the airport, unfortunately sudden explosion happened. Yeah, explosion happened and everyone went away. My driver, yeah, because it's unpredictable situation. So we returned back. After 3 or 5 days, again, Cosmin called me, you have to cross the border. Cross the border and come to Islamabad, the capital city of Pakistan. I told him, yeah, but it's so difficult and dangerous for me because Taliban know me, and there are a lot of checkpoints during the way. And so if possible, I should cross the border of Iran, because on that way just belong to the Pashtun ethnic. But in the other way, it's easy than that board.
And you lived in Iran for a while, so
Yeah, it's easy for me, because the embassy of Romania is located in Tehran too. He said that no, just your visa released from Islamabad. It's your choice. You can select it or you can reject it. Because our situation is so dangerous, when I share this idea with my colleagues, with my family, after that we accept such a risk. We took 2 cars and crossed the border of Islamabad. We can call it a Turkham. Yeah, but fortunately, because the Romanian authority arranged and before talked to some Talibs representative as well, some Pakistani and so, we can pass the border of Islamabad. And when I arrived in Islamabad, we directly go to the embassy of Romania. Then after 2 or 3 days, we moved from Islamabad to Romania. Yeah, that's it. But I think because I was lucky to find such an opportunity. Otherwise, it's not clear. As I told you, the history of my colleagues. But unfortunately, we are as a member of founder of Avicenna University. One of my colleagues, he's a member of negotiation team in Doha, Qatar. Now he's in Norway, and 2 of them are in Australia, and 4 or 5 my colleagues are in Italy. Just I'm in Romania, and many others remain in Kabul up to now. But just let me share this idea or this request, because it's belong to the journalist. As you know, some of my students are journalists. They listed a name because they are belong to the Shia and Hazara ethnic, as well they are journalists. They are in danger. If possible, the journalist network of Romania support those guys in terms of evacuation, or in terms of sending some visa, and so I don't know exactly it's possible or no. Just it's my responsible is this behavior or this policy and approach based on humanitarian approach. That's it. I thinking it's my duty to share with you, but it's your job and your business. You can do it or no. Yeah. Afghanistan geography is a field of battle. Recognized as a field of battle. All people around the world who are ideologists, who are extremists, they should gather together in one place. See, it's Afghanistan. Yeah. European ideologists, Central Asia, Russia, China, Pakistan, India, US, all those guys came to Afghanistan and decided to establish an Islamic system. It's a kind of national interest for those government too, maybe.
I wanted to ask about this possibility of evacuating more people from Afghanistan now, maybe not only Romania, but what is the situation? What are the conditions? Because as far as I know, they kind of stopped these processes of evacuation, right?
The people who were evacuated received humanitarian visas. That's usually not an open option for the government. We have it in the legislation, but they have to pass it through a special ordinance of the government, and that is of political will, which did not exist until now. We are happy that it happened, the evacuation happened, but the government did not announce any other intention to further evacuate people. The civil society did gather up, did make pressure as it could through we have limited possibilities. We are not able to influence as much as we would wish the decisions of the political system. And I would add one more thing. Since the crisis started, many Afghans who are already here in Romania and Bucharest contacted us. They requested support for family reunification, bringing their wife, children, parents, extended family. And it was a chore because most of them did not have documents, civil registry documents from the country of origin, because this is a thing specific to somebody who has refugee experience, right? You don't get to take your documents with you. You don't have time to do it. Many relatives do not have valid passports. The new Afghan authorities did not issue passports to people so they could go, and this is ongoing. I mean, from my understanding, they started again to issue travel documents, and maybe this will change in the future. But anyways, it was a blockage, it was a blur, and the possibilities to help them were very limited. Leaving that aside, the borders are closed, so families, if they wanted to get away from the country, did not have the possibility to travel legally, and still it is very challenging, so they will have to put themselves at risk in order to get here. Having legal pathways of migration is absolutely essential if the European Union would really like to help in this situation. This would be the most important thing that they would do. This would save lives. This would prevent people from crossing borders illegally, put themselves at risk, children who are being tortured and, going through psychological traumas on their way to Romania. The situation is really challenging, and I hope that the policy will change, although I'm not very optimistic in this sense.